256, 106, runway 1 right, clear for takeoff.
1 right, clear to go, yeah, 255.
Clear 4461, 1 right, left and white.
Hey everybody, welcome back to FlightCast. I'm Jason Rosewell, and with me is Skyhawk Heavy, Mark Denton. This is an aviation podcast inspired by the mobile flight simulator Infinite Flight, which you can find in the App Store and on Google Play. How are you today, Mark?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. We have almost all of the snow is gone off the ground here in Parry Sound, and it's raining, which is a beautiful sight.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Almost got some greenery back.
Yeah, and we just got back from Disney with the family.
Yes, how was that?
Oh, it was awesome. Too short, but we stayed off-site, and we had, a condo and a car, so we were able to go to the park for a few days, and then we went to the beach one day, and we spent a few days by the pool, so it was a good mix. It's fun.
Yeah,
it was
those
hot.
pictures look pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're in Florida. Did you get the thunderstorms every day at 3 o'clock?
No, you know what? It didn't rain at all. Not even a
really.
Not a drop. Oh no, that's not true. One day we were sitting around the pool, and it rained in the pool, but not where I was sitting.
That's Florida.
Mark, we have some really cool guests today, and we have tons to talk about, and it's going to take us a while, so I want to keep this brief, but I just want to check in with you and see how the alpha testing on the global release is going for you.
Yeah.
Frustrating?
Yeah. It's, which, but that's why we're testing in alpha right now. There are just so many bugs that keep popping up, and several will get fixed, and then others will manifest.
Yeah.
And
well,
so
the other day I was flying, and I happened to be chatting with Laura at the same time, and I said, "Oh, I just crashed," and she said, "Okay, I see it. I think I know what the problem was," and so she fixed it, and then pushed a build. And then it's been dubbed the Jason fix with you guys because it broke a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah,
so
like
it's my fault now.
I mean, yeah, and it's not that it's that bad. I mean, you're able to open the app, so that's good.
Yeah, you can spawn.
Yeah, well, if you're in SoCal, if you try to spawn in SoCal, you can't spawn there right now. But I mean, this is just all part of alpha testing, and I get that people are frustrated and they want the update, but they would be more frustrated if they got an update if we released it with all of the issues, because it's going to take one time for someone to do that long flight like they're talking about that you see people posting. Oh, I'm going to fly from the North Pole to the South Pole. Well, when you make that 20-something, 30-something hour flight, only to crash when you're on a 2-mile final, you're going to get pissed.
Here's what was cool today. You and I went for a little flight, and it was a nice one. The terrain was not too exciting. It was mostly flat, but I was
a nice little flight.
We're suddenly, all of a sudden, preparing for this episode because it was sort of a last-minute switcheroo. We do have Dion Minton on deck for an interview, but he's at Sun and Fun right now, and our schedules are just not working together. So we've got him coming up. But Laura Laban, Infinite Flight developer, popped up on my Slack channel and said, "Hey, I have an interesting idea. Can you chat for a second?" And it spawned the idea for this episode.
Yeah.
So while we're doing that, you and I are in flight and approaching Brussels. And what was awesome was that my airplane was using LNAV and following the flight plan, which I adjusted to go into 01 instead of where we were planning on landing because the winds changed. And then as soon as I
didn't know you adjusted it.
I did. And then, because I was still like setting a microphone up and stuff like that. So I literally switched LNAV from nav to approach mode. For auto land. And I didn't even touch my device after that. I set the speed and I set flaps to flaps to full. And then I didn't touch my device until it was slowing down on the runway.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Pretty cool.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that you had changed it. So what I ended up doing when we changed to 01, I just basically disengaged the LNAV and then just hand flew it the rest of the way. And And of course, because of the time of day, it was just kind of at that point to
At
where
dusk.
the runway lights haven't come on yet,
Yeah.
and you can't see anything.
Hmm.
So
Exactly.
I'm totally trusting everything on my HUD
Uh,
to for the glide slope and everything. So
yeah. Mark, today we have the part one of our Women in Aviation series, and I am pumped about this one.
I am too, man. I am
Yeah.
too.
Of all the series we've done, real world pilots, air traffic controllers, what other series have we done? Developer series.
Air traffic
This, yeah,
controllers.
this is the one I've been looking forward to the most. The women in the workplace in general have, fought their way to the top, and in aviation, the story is no different. I think I just saw a post the other day, and it might have been an older post. I didn't check the date, but it was recently a first all-female, all-African-American crew on a, I
Wow.
think it was a Delta flight. But man, that is so great, so awesome. It shouldn't be so surprising to us, but it is. And let's be honest, most of the time do it better than we do anyway. So we're
I will not dispute that at all.
yeah. So we are starting our Women in Aviation with part one, and we've got standing by. We've got one of our developers from Infinite Flight, Laura Laban, as well as a surprise guest. And so why don't we get them in here?
Yeah, let's go on and bring them in.
So as we've said, we have Infinite Flight developer and pilot Laura Laban, as well as surprise guest, a CRJ-900 Captain for a U.S. regional carrier and co-chair for the Transgender group of the National Gay Pilots Association, Erika Delong. Ladies, thanks for making time for us today.
Happy to be here.
So Laura, we've heard about your aviation story before, and listeners can always check out the back catalog for that, but the really interesting thing here is that we've interviewed you before as Matt, and that was before you came out as transgender. And since then, a lot has happened in your life. So why don't you give us a quick snapshot of that story?
Okay, well, I guess if you're asking about the whole life, this would take a long time. But if it's just about the aviation part, we'll just say I was socialized as a guy until I was 35 years old, and I got married, I had kids, and then sort of like the entire life since I was 5 years old, I always sort of felt something was really not aligned between my body and my gender expression was not what it should have been, and it's something that I was able to push down until I couldn't, and when I was 35 years old, so about last year, I realized that my problem was, problem, quote unquote, was that I was transgender, and pushing it away was not going to be a long-term option, because there's no such thing as pushing this away forever. And so I came out to my family, my wife, which was a super stressful situation, but glad to say that she's supportive, and we're still together. The difficult second part was coming out to the bigger portion of my life, which is the Infinite Flight community. Because as some of you know, there's a lot of following that I have on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. A lot of people call me by my former name at that time. So it was sort of a big step for me, a big leap. And I had gone to, right after I came out to my family, I had gone to a conference in San Francisco called GDC that was it's a game developers conference. And it basically is about anything game development. And there was a LGBT panel. So I went there and asked people in the panel, has anybody ever transitioned in or came out in a community like the one I have? Because I'm not sure exactly how to do it. Should I tell everybody? Should I just switch? What do I do? And they basically told me, no, you're on your own. Nobody has done that. And they were coming back to the talk to your HR people. And we don't have we don't have any HR people at our company. Everybody's working from home. So I just sort of had to improvise. and this has been pretty successful coming out, I would say. There's some people that I've had arguments with. There's some difficulty in the family and things like that, but overall, it's been a pretty positive response from everybody else all around. And I recently posted a few things for last week's Transgender Day of Visibility, which was on Friday, and I got some extremely positive feedback from my experience in my coming out, which helped a lot of people. I invited people to ask me questions on Instagram and on Twitter, and a few people came forward and told me that my story and my coming out actually helped them either to come out to their parents, to just accept somebody they knew who was some letter in the LGBT community. So it's been pretty okay, and I'm pretty happy things are working smoothly, and I'm happier than I ever was before. So
yeah, well, as your friend, I can echo that comment. You seem happier and you look happier, and it's a really cool thing to be able to sort of watch happen. And I have to say, when looking back over the whole process, because when you came out online, that was the first time that I had heard about it, and because I'm not on staff or anything, so I didn't have the inside track, and I thought that really, aside from a few people, it was a very positive response, and I applaud you for that, and I think that it's really amazing that now you can do what you did the other day for remind me what it was called again, transgender awareness.
The transgender day of visibility,
right? Yeah. So what you can do that, and then inspire people to be able to really be themselves, which is the happiest part about this whole thing in my mind. So I thank you for sharing all that. And how would you say that your local aviation community has been with your transition? Because you were this guy at an airport that had an airplane, and now you're this woman at an airport who has an airplane. So how's that been going?
So I am lucky to live in the Bay Area, where seeing people transition is not an uncommon thing. So it was not, there's some people that I knew on Facebook, so they sort of saw my coming out post, and the next time they saw me, they're like, oh, okay, like whatever. But there are some people that I just didn't want to tell them, or just they were not close friends. And at some point, there was our next door hangar has some kind of trainer airplane from the war, like World War II era, and I just showed up and said, hey, if I can see some weird looks, so I can see that they recognize me, I just say, oh, by the way, I used to be, this guy, and I'm transitioning, I'm transgender, I'm transitioning. Most of the response has been like, oh, okay, cool, good for you, and I hope you're happy. And I've never really had any issues here, mostly because in the Bay Area, close to San Francisco, it's like the LGBT capital of the U.S., at least, maybe the world. Right. So it's pretty common. So pretty much no issue. Except, with the hormones, you kind of like lose some muscle mass. So I'd say the only difference that I've seen at the airport is the hangar doors are more heavy, and the plane is heavier to push out of the hangar.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah. I noticed when you took me flying in the Citabria that it was, you get a normal response over ATC, and then sometimes what you would hear, because you're still transitioning, and you've said publicly before that your voice and things like that are a work in progress. So people will say, "Oh, I have him in sight," but I couldn't decide when we were flying if that's just something people say, referring to the airplane, or whether they were commenting about you because they could hear you talking. But these are all sort of, I guess, interesting little components that you wouldn't ever think of until you're in the situation.
So to me, this is one of my ultimate targets, being able to work on my voice so that ATC says, thank you, ma'am, on the radio.
Right.
not been able to reach that point. I think there's probably some times where they don't know what to say.
Right.
But last time I was on final in Palo Alto. I think it was with you. Maybe I forgot. Some guy in front of us was being too slow to exit the runway, so I just stayed high, to slow myself down as much as I could instead of descending, and I just slip it to the ground. So they know what I'm doing, and he sort of knew what I was doing, so he didn't give me a go around. And the guy exited in time, and he said, "Thank you, sir," because I was like, I'm not going to say anything, but it's this is a little, razor cut every time someone says it to you. But the target would be someone says, "Thank you, ma'am," on the radio. That would be
right.
Or something ma'am on the radio.
Yeah. Well, and that would be the, as you've posted before, that would be the ultimate level achievement unlocked, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
One of the big ones. Probably not the ultimate one, but one of the big ones in terms of progress.
Yes. Cool. Erika, welcome to FlightCast, and thanks for making time for us today on Spur of the Moment.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Erika, I'd love to hear about your story, and let's go a little farther back because we've never talked to you before, and start sort of at the beginning and ask what we ask all of our pilots that we interview. What got you into aviation? What was it that spurred you in this direction?
Well, I grew up in an aviation family. I'm a byproduct of a airline captain and a mom who is a flight attendant. Both of them fly at different U.S. major carriers. And so I grew up with aviation all around me. I lived aviation, but I wasn't encouraged to be in aviation. I think sometimes as parents we tend to want to encourage our children to do other things and explore other things, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And I knew at a very, very, very young age, about age 5 or 6, that I wanted to be not only just a pilot, but I wanted to be an airline pilot and be in the industry. And so as I went on with life and through the grade schools and the education system, that was always in the back of my mind is, what does this pertain to flying airplanes? Because I've been blessed to know exactly what I wanted to do at a very, very, very young age.
So as you sort of went through that process, and since we are talking about women in aviation, you were not a woman at that time, and correct me if I'm wrong. So you began your transition later in life.
Yes. So I started flying in 1991, 25 years ago. I started flying as a male, and I flew up until about 3 years ago. So at the age of 40 is when I made the transition to female. It was a situation where there was a lot of elements involved with it. One, I was married, and I still am married to my wife.
Oh, that's awesome.
We've been together for 12 years, and I've known her for 19, and we have a beautiful daughter who's 8 years old, and her name is an aviation name. And so we kind of are keeping the aviation theme in our family as well.
And is your wife into aviation?
She is. My wife has her private pilot's license, and she has a couple hundred hours.
Awesome.
She doesn't fly very often, and that's okay because we're focusing on being parents, but we plan to continue flying together. On the side, we have a fleet of small airplanes. We currently have 3 general aviation airplanes, so we kind of have a little fleet that we spend our quality family time. So we go out to the airport a lot, whether it's to fly or just to hang out. We're always trying to introduce our daughter and we have so many aviation friends. Aviation is such a small community, and it's a community that we trust. We rely on each other. Majority of them are very, very, very professional, and it's always nice to talk with people. I hold an airline transport pilot license with multiple type ratings, but I'm also active as a CFI MEI flight instructor. So trying to be diverse within my training and outreach towards others has been actually quite successful after my transition.
Wow. You're a busy person.
Well, aviation is an addiction. When I'm not flying the larger airplanes, and I fly those about 700 hours a year, I still try to get in 100 or 150 hours of GA flying is about perfect for me. And yeah, it's an addiction, but it's also a stress reliever for me. It's freedom. It's just kind of who I am as a person. And I think it's important to find something that you like, that you're good at, that's positive, and then just feed that and continue to grow.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing some of the personal details. It's awesome that a few hours ago I didn't know you existed, and here we are, and you're sharing your story. So thank you for that. And I love that. Obviously, I love talking about aviation, and I love hearing these stories. But the part of what you've said so far that literally gave me goosebumps was when you talked about your family, and that you and your wife are still together, and that your family seems to be thriving. So good for you, and I love hearing both of you say that you're so happy. And well, I could go on and on talking about that side of this, but let's bring it right back to aviation, and a little further back. You skipped over it a little bit, but you said you started flying in what was it, 1992 or?
Yeah, 1991 is when I started flying.
And so you got your private license first, and then, or did you go straight to flight school, or how did that work?
Well, it kind of an interesting story. When I was a little kid, I kept on pestering my father, who was an airline captain, that I really wanted to fly. And he says to me, if you want to fly, start saving your money. And so I actually started saving my money at a very young age. I would say probably second or third grade. And it was $1 here, 50 cents here.
Oh, wow.
If I got $100 birthday check or something, it went right into my savings. And I actually bought my very first airplane at age 19. When everyone graduated from high school, most people bought a new car. Well, I bought a 1966 Cessna 150, and I had 0 hours, and I actually had to have it delivered to our local airport. And at that point, originally I think my dad was thinking we were going to buy some sort of remote control airplane, but he didn't realize that I was meaning a real airplane. So my very first lesson in my logbook is actually in an airplane that I owned, and my dad was my flight instructor for the first hours through my solo. So my dad actually soloed me in an airplane owned by me, and then I went off to the local flight schools, and I've done all my flight training, private, instrument, commercial, multi-engine, through all the Part 61 flight schools in the local area. For me, I was paying for it out of my own pocket as a young adult, and so I would go from school to figure out how I could possibly do this, and that's how I worked through it. I paid as I went. I worked hard enough to get another rating. I would get that rating, And then sometimes I was blessed. Something silly as a car accident. Somebody bumped my fender. Instead of getting a new fender in my pickup truck, I bought a multi-engine rating with that money and just drove
awesome.
a pickup truck with a big dent on the side. Because for me, that was my path that I came up with myself. And so I worked through the ratings. I worked on my flight instruction ratings and flight instructed for several years. But one of the interesting things about flight instructing is because I own my own airplane, a lot of people are doing flight instruction to build time. For me, I was flight instructing because I was going to fly my own airplane anyways. So I figured I might as well teach people. I love to teach. I love to introduce people to aviation. And so to be able to flight instruct when it doesn't matter how much time you have takes the pressure and the element off of the situation. And I honestly think you provide much, much better quality flight instruction when you're putting the student first and the goals and the needs of the student, and you put your needs and your personal desires second. And I think that's, as a teacher, I think that is so important.
It is, and we've all heard those stories of the flight instructors that are just really putting in time, and they try to get their students to put as much time on the hob as they can, and really they're in it for themselves and not the joy of being able to teach people about flying. So that's really cool to hear. I'm going to move us right along because we don't have a ton of time today. So Erika, what was you've already said you decided at one point to come out as transgender, and I'm going back to this because of the fact that we are doing Women in Aviation, and also because we just passed the Transgender Visibility Day of Visibility. I keep messing that up.
Just one time.
Yeah. Yes, right. The Department of the Redundancy Department. So how did coming out affect you? You've already said you decided at some point. You can decide to share the why if you want to, but how did coming out affect your work in the commercial pilot world?
Sure. One of the things that is very important for me, because it was my livelihood, I needed to come up with a plan in order to stay employed as a pilot. And then the other thing too was come up with a plan that I could maintain my medical certificate as well. So what I did is I actually let my company know through my local pilots union, and it was just a simple request just to notify them. I didn't identify myself. I just let them know that we have a transgender pilot, and there's certain laws and rules and company policies that we have to follow, particular non-discrimination. We have a non-discrimination LGBT phrase within our company. And so I let them know, and we worked together. This was a collaboration between my regional carrier, also the parent company who owns us, and the Airline Pilots Association, which is ELPA, which represents our pilot group. And so what we did is we came up with a plan that I would be transitioning, and when I returned from some leave that I had taken, that Erika would be returning, and I would be female, and all my license, all my certificates and medical certificates would all be in female, and I would just basically pick up where I left off. And so we worked together, and I remember walking into recurrent ground school. I had left as a male in a male uniform as a father, and I came walking in as a beautiful, lovely, tall female pilot who is now a mom. And it was really interesting. Within the airline community, there is diversity, but more importantly, we have professionalism and respect. That's how we keep safe, is by following company procedures, following the guidelines, following checklists and things like that. So we as pilots, as commercial airline pilots, we're pilots first and we're employees second. But one of the interesting things is as I walked in, people didn't even really ask. People looked, but they were very, very respectful. Very similar in the cockpit as well, as we're flying in the flight deck. I'll fly 3 or 4 day trip. The subject may or may not come up, and I've actually had a very, very smooth transition. For the last 3 years, I haven't had any flight deck issues. I've had some questions, and to be honest with you, we just educate. I educate. And it would be the same concept if we were looking at the METAR and I knew the answer on the decoding on a METAR. We would just talk about it and learn, and then we move on. And so it was very interesting working with the flight attendants, both gay, straight, the pilots, gay, straight. I haven't had any issues, and I think one of the reasons is I have introduced them to a transgender person for the first time, and also a transgender pilot for the first time, and I introduced them through professionalism. One of the things that I get communicated to me by my crew members is they were expecting a really large change in how I flew the airplane or how I reacted. But I still fly the airplane the way I've always flown the airplane. I treat people with love and respect. And for me, my style of running my flight deck and the cabin on the aircraft has worked very well just through being professional and sticking to the task. And if there's ever sort of a conflict, we just rely on policies and procedures that we're trained to do, because that is a very, very consistent, well thought out program that's approved by the FAA. And so we need to fall back on our previous training whenever there's issues.
Awesome. I love that. Laura, can you give us a little, can you explain how you met Erika and what is she doing at your house?
Okay. So it is transgender related. So Julie and I, so my wife and I, it's obviously a struggle for a partner, a spouse, when their husband comes out as transgender, because you face a lot of everybody has an opinion on the reason why you should divorce and how it's not going to work and all that. And when you have kids and you have built something together, it's not as easy. Everybody else will tell you, like, oh, if my husband came out as transgender, I would leave right away. It's like, it's not easy, because it's not easy to just leave like that. So we've been looking for somebody who had gone through this and had more experience than us and could maybe guide us and help us understand how they approach the subject, how it worked out for them, and give us tips and tricks. And I met this friend online who basically told me, oh, I know somebody that actually has a family. And she came out as transgender. She's a pilot. She's married. She has a kid. So you guys should really talk. So she put us in contact. And I think maybe like a day later, we were on a Skype session or a Hangout session. And we spoke for a few hours and exchanged ideas. And just basically, Erika and her wife just told us how it worked for them and what happened. And it was funny to see and interesting to see Erika's wife and my wife talk about their common struggles with having their husband become a spouse or a wife or however they want to call them, because it's very similar. It's the same questions, it's the same issues, it's the looks of other people. So this is basically how we met. And then a couple of days ago, this is completely unplanned. Erika just sent me a text like, "Oh, I can be in San Francisco. We have a couple of days off. Like, would you like us to come?" And we just didn't have anything specific plans. I said, "All right, sure, yeah, just come over." And then this is why we're here.
That's awesome. And of course, as pilots and cabin crew, you guys can just hop on an airplane and away you go.
Yeah, it was kind of neat. I brought my 8-year-old daughter out as well. Laura has children, and I think some of our biggest supporters are our kids, and they live every day with a transgender parent. And my daughter has built a friendship with Laura's daughter, and just seeing how other people navigate life, and just try to come up with a plan, and just making sure that our flight plan doesn't take us too close to thunderstorms or areas beyond our personal limits. And so as the flight has up-and-coming issues, we assess the situation and come up with a plan. And sometimes we just need to divert, but we can still be successful with a diversion. And so it's been really neat. The transgender community is very, very small, and the transgender community of pilots with children is even smaller. So my wife and I and my daughter are very, very blessed to find a commonality with another family. And it's amazing how well we've clicked. They say if you have a large room with 100 people, the 5 pilots will all find each other at the end of the day.
Yes.
And it's so true with the transgender pilots. There's so few of us that we work together, we network together, and that's one of the things as a woman pilot I've noticed. Women pilots, they network all the time. Their network system is so complex, and it's a really neat thing to see. And I always admired it. Now it's exciting that I'm part of it. And so I'm growing every day. The support that I've received from my fellow female pilots is just unbelievable. I haven't had a single problem flying with females. And to be honest, they always tell me they prefer flying with me over a male because there's a lot of pressures that are taken away from them, because I'm just one of the girls, and they don't have to worry about the whole dynamic of flying as a female with a male pilot. And I think that's a common theme that we see throughout the industry is as more and more women get involved, we're going to see and have more opportunities to have first officer, captain, all-female crews. And it's exciting to see. It's also a great way to show leadership and mentorship to our next generation of women pilots out there.
Now, Erika, be honest with me. You've used that flight plan and life analogy before in a presentation or something. You must have. It was way too good.
No, it's just
because that's what I picked up on as well. I love how you actually used, the aviation terminology with the flight plan, and avoiding the storms, the thunderstorms, having to divert, all of that. That's awesome. I actually like that.
Well, I have one of the interesting things with dealing with advocacy as a transgender pilot is we just need to give our fellow pilots a little dual instruction on the subject and not jam it down their throats, but make it available. And I've had hundreds of conversations with fellow people, and I've got so many aviation friends and supporters. So you have to put it in a perspective that they can relate to, and so with the aviation, that is definitely the theme that I use. One interesting analogy that I use as well with non-aviation people, particularly motorheads or my guy friends, is I was a 1973 big black Chevrolet, and when I came out of the factory, they put me in a Ford Mustang. And that's just plain wrong. I mean, I can drive, I can work, but it's just not right. And the big black Chevrolet would be my heart, my soul, my personality, who I am on the inside, what makes me just who I am. And rather than throw my heart, my personality away, I needed to get my big black Chevrolet in a 1973 Chevy Corvette. And when I did that, it aligned and it was correct. And I went to check my numbers, and my numbers on my body and my numbers on my engine matched. And now I'm a fully functioning Chevrolet Corvette going down the road.
Very nice.
Nice.
Laura, you going for? Have you been in the Satabria with Erika yet?
No. We had a flat tire to fix yesterday, so they just fixed it in the end of the day. And today we might not have time to go fly, but maybe next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure this won't be the first hangout for you. Mark, have you heard of Live Flight for Infinite Flight?
Yeah, man. I've used it to track flights and to see which regions and airports are busy before, planning my flight.
Right. Well, as you probably know, a new version of Live Flight is now available at liveflightapp.com. This new version is better than ever and has been rebuilt from the ground up. With a new design, more flight stats, a search feature, and airport information, tracking and planning your flight is easier than ever.
Oh, man, I know. And now with the new downloadable KML files, you can download your flight data to any Earth browser, such as Google Earth. It's so cool.
Absolutely. And if that wasn't enough, you can now subscribe to Live Flight Horizon, a new service for only $1.99 a month that provides real-time, worldwide airport information such as weather, runway data, and charts. It also allows you to search for flights, active ATC frequencies, and airports. And as a Live Flight Horizon subscriber, you'll also get much longer online sessions, and you'll be helping Cam to keep developing and improving this great app.
So guys, make sure you head over to liveflightapp.com to give it a try, and also subscribe to Live Flight Horizon. It will make your infinite flight experience so much better.
Live Flight is now available in the App Store for iOS. And now back to the podcast. Erika, before we let you go, actually, we're going to do a few community questions, but before that, you are co-chair of the NGPA. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I co-chair the transgender group within the NGPA, and one of the goals of that committee is to try to provide information to transgender pilots. There are several things that are involved with the FAA. One thing in particular would be maintaining your medical certificate. We're putting together information to guide you for that. We're also putting together an outreach of how to change your name, finding other people that may be having some of the same issues that you're having. And then also there is people within our advocacy group that are available through the NGPA to help mentor and guide people and just answer questions through through their process. One of the things that I did is made my full transition without even meeting another transgender person, and I had to go and research for days and days all the ins and outs of maintaining my aviation as a new transgender pilot. So the NGPA is working on having an outlet for that, and they have been huge supporters of the transgender community, and we've got NGPA transgender pilots at almost every major carrier in the United States and also Europe as well. So throughout the country, there's usually someone that we can get people in touch with that would be willing to help and mentor or just talk to, and it's such a neat resource within aviation, and ngpa.org would be where you could start. And I would encourage people, if they're struggling with their identity, to make healthy choices and start doing research, and remember that you're not alone. And you don't have to be a trans woman either. We have trans males as well that have transitioned from female to male. So we're all encompassing of the transgender community and with aviation.
Very good. All right, Mark. Well, why don't we pick a few questions from the forum if you've got that pulled up, if you have anything that is jumping out at you. I'm seeing one from Aviation Lover. To both of you, what aircraft did you do your training on? We heard, Erika, you said you bought your own Cessna 150. And did you do all your training on that one?
I started out in that. That was an excellent platform when I first started. And then I moved up to a 172 Cessna products. And then pretty much whatever airplane I could find that was the most reasonably priced that would satisfy my goal. So I've flown Cessnas, Pipers, and Beechcraft as well. And then I also did some tailwheel flying during that time. I wanted to mix it up because sometimes we can train, but we need to have fun. And I also hold a single engine seaplane rating as well. So
there we go. Nice.
I kind of snuck in a couple extra ratings along the way to help augment the aviation training process.
Okay. And what about you, Laura? What was your training aircraft?
I started on a 152, then went on to a DR400. Actually, no, Piper. I think it was a Cherokee. I think I forgot, like a 160 horsepower. It was in France. It was a weird version that they had in France, and then the DR400. And then when I moved to the US, I got my US PPL on a Archer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Laura, do we get a CRJ rework in honor of Erika since you're now friends?
Yes.
I mean, we were talking about this morning. Obviously, now that I have access to a CRJ, we already had access to some CRJ pilots, but there's more data to gather and more feedback. I've introduced Erika to Infinite Flight and given her a demo of Global here on my computer, so I think she's hooked.
Fantastic. Along with the rest of us.
Let her fly the 200.
Well, I am willing to fly the 200, the 400, the 200, the 700, and the 900. And it's really neat to see the program and the potential for flying the CRJ on the screen. I look forward to that in the future, and just overall impressed with the product. Looking at it, I've been in a wide variety of simulators. We currently give our type ratings in a Class D simulator, full type rating. So the first time that we actually fly the airplane, we have passengers, and boy, looking at your program, it's quite impressive. Very, very, very impressive. Good job.
Well, I can't take any of the credit, really. We'll have to give that to Laura and her team. But
I'm part of that team, so I'll take some of the credit.
Yes, Mark. Let's give Mark some credit.
Yeah.
So a question from both of you, from Stephen Walker, who's one of our IFATC guys. For both of you, what would be your best advice to the fellow LGBT, and let's toss a Q on there, community who are interested in getting into aviation and potentially wanting to become a pilot but might be hesitant or scared?
If it's just for me not being in the commercial airline business, I would say just go to your local airport and start flying. I don't think today, if you live in the Western society and your country is not too obsessed with LGBT rights, it's going to be fine. Nobody really, people have issues with that, but it should be pretty much fine to just go fly and get lessons, regardless of if you're trans, LGBT something, or straight. Just go flying is the main thing, I would say.
One of the things I would say about someone that is in the LGBTQ community, you are a customer, and you have got a lot of money you want to spend. And as a flight instructor, I have an obligation to provide you quality instruction. And I always have told my students, for some reason, if you don't feel comfortable, or you don't feel like you're getting a good value for your money, or we just have some sort of mismatch in our flight instruction, by all means, don't get locked into one instructor. Find the person that's going to work best for you, because this is someone you're investing in. This is someone that you may do multiple ratings with, and there are people out there that will fit your learning style, but also your lifestyle. And I think it's so important to be encouraged in who you are as a person. So I would encourage people to just get out and give it a try. Just interview some potential flight instructors and just see how they react. You're not committed to a flight with them, but I did a lot of interviewing of my flight instructors. How often are you available? What are your goals? What is your teaching style? And just keeping in mind that I was the customer there. To the flight instructors out there that are listening to this, I would say be available to all kinds of students, and use that as an opportunity to grow yourself and to grow your clientele, because the best kind of marketing is your students telling their friends, hey, this Erika flight instructor is just been wonderful, and I would highly recommend her. And that's what I would suggest to people that are interested in getting into the industry or just enjoying it as a hobby.
Very nice.
And I would say also, Erika, that as CFIs, with the aviation community, as far as pilots, like you said, we're a very small community considering, and flight instructors, CFIs, they don't have any room really to be choosy anyway, because there's just not a lot of people out there that are training, doing any kind of flight training. So, I mean, they shouldn't be, what's the word I'm looking for? Training with prejudice, I guess you could say. You know, they should be open to train anyone and have that desire to teach anyone that is willing to learn and apply the time, you know, to their flight. So, I mean, that's just my thoughts on it as far as CFIs are concerned.
And I totally agree with you. And really, that is like the ultimate professional. And we are, as CFIs, we are professional pilots. And,
exactly.
And it just reinforces being professional. And yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's just there, you know, there's just not a lot now. And I've come across, I've met a few out here at my local FBO, you know, these CFIs, these younger Thundercats, that they take people up. And when I talk to friends of mine who have gone up to fly, they come down, well, they flew most of the flight showing me this. Unfortunately, there are some CFIs that will actually go up and try to show off their skills more than anything. But, you know, generally at an FBO, there's going to be more than one flight instructor. So if there are any issues with one, or if you don't feel comfortable with one for whatever reason, then there's usually always an option for a different flight instructor. So, you know, that's something else that they can keep in mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Any other questions from the forum that are standing out to you, Mark?
No, I was actually going to call out that one that from Stephen, which I thought was going to be really good. I'm really surprised, though, that nobody posted in here. Well, this one's for Laura. When's the update?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, it's been out since April 1st. You guys miss it?
Yeah, didn't you get that notice, Mark?
Yeah, it was.
I've had it.
Yeah,
I've had it. I don't know why these people are still asking.
Yeah, everybody has it. Like, hello.
Laura and Erika, would you like to add anything to our chat before I let you both go today?
I would just encourage everybody, whether you're part of the LGBTQ community, whether you're male or female, one, to just feed your passion for aviation, but also if you are struggling with your personal identity, I just encourage you to make healthy choices and find the resources that will allow you to have a clear mind and be able to focus, so that when you are in the cockpit on the flight deck, that you may be a very, very focused and safe pilot. And that's what I would encourage people to do. Well,
Erika said it better than I ever could. Then I guess I would just say it will be about Infinite Flight, about the update. That, you know, if people want the update now, they can have it, but it's not working so well.
Yeah.
If they want to fly, be ready for flying 12 hours. Your 12-hour flight might end 11 hours and 59 minutes, or you plan on, because it's going to crash on you. So
yeah, I'll be more than happy to send anybody my crash report and show them just over the past few days the amount of crashes we've had.
We're chasing weird crashes where we have absolutely no information about what's going on. So yeah, just and about like the LGBT part, I guess, just be yourself, and it gets better. I know it's hard at the beginning. The first time you realize things, it's hard, but it gets easier and it gets better. It could look like a dark path, but at the end, there's like some. It's worth it.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you guys taking the time on FlightCast to join us, spur of the moment and last minute. And Laura, thank you for this awesome idea. And thank you to both of you for sharing your stories so honestly and for being an inspiration to so many people. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
We appreciate it, and may everybody have blue skies and tailwinds.
I love that. Everyone, don't forget to check out FlightCast Cafe and for bonus content from this and other episodes. That's our show, and we want to say thank you to Laura, Laban, and Erika Delong again for being part of our show today. Thanks as always for listening, and if you haven't already, head over to the App Store or Google Play and download Infinite Flight. For more of the podcast, visit our website and be sure to subscribe on iTunes or YouTube. You can find us on social media at FlightCast Audio. FlightCast is brought to you by Linkhouse Media on the web at linkhousemedia.com. To cover the fine print, FlightCast is not affiliated with Infinite Flight or Flying Development Studio. I'm Jason Rosewell. Thanks for listening, and happy landings.